Sex and Sorcery, The Memory Thief's Gambit. Friends, before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook, and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you in advance. Moonlight, liquid and silver, poured through the arched window of my tower room, painting our entangled bodies in shades of pearl and shadow. His skin was warm against mine, the scent of sandalwood and spent magic clinging to the air like a forbidden promise. Lord Theron's mouth was at my throat, his kisses a slow, deliberate magic that unspooled my thoughts and coiled heat low in my belly. My fingers traced the powerful line of his back, feeling the shift of muscle, the faint ridge of a scar earned in some long-ago duel. A story I hadn't yet earned the right to hear. This was our fifth tryst. Each one felt more dangerous than the last, a heady cocktail of desire and deceit. I, Serena Vane, a mere scribe in the eyes of the guilds, was the secret indulgence of a man who could command the winds. He didn't know I transcribed the city's most sensitive magical treaties by day and wrote scandalous tales of forbidden love by night. He only knew the woman in his arms, the one who met his intensity with a curiosity that mirrored his own. "You are particularly quiet tonight, my muse," he murmured against my skin, his voice a low thrum that vibrated through me. His hand slid from my hip to the small of my back, pulling me flush against him. The air crackled with the residual energy of his power, a static charge that made every nerve ending sing. "Some silences are more eloquent than words, my lord," I breathed, arching into him, my own hidden magic, a subtle empathy that let me feel the truths people concealed, flaring to life. I sensed the genuine, sharp spike of his desire, but beneath it, the cool, constant undercurrent of his ambition. I was a delightful distraction, a passionate interlude in the grand political composition of his life. "Theron," he insisted, his lips finding mine again in a kiss that was both tender and possessive. "When we're like this, I am simply Theron." But he was never simple. He was a movement in a much larger, more dangerous piece. His mouth was demanding, and for a heart-stopping moment, the world narrowed to the slide of silk, the press of his body, the frantic, hopeful rhythm of my own heart. It was a kiss that felt like both a beginning and a farewell. Later, as the moon began its descent, he dressed with the same efficient grace he used to wield magic. He left a single, perfect fire orchid on my pillow, its petals holding a captured, shimmering ember that would glow for a week before fading. A beautiful, ephemeral gift. I lay in the wreckage of my sheets, the ghost of his touch on my skin, and wondered if this was how a moth felt, drawn to a flame that promised illumination but delivered only ash. The memory of him was a persistent, aching warmth as I entered the moon and ember that evening. The tavern was our sanctuary, its low, timbered ceilings and roaring hearth a grounding counterpoint to the dizzying heights of Theron's world. The scent of mulled wine, roasting meat, and the faint, smoky residue of harmless hearth spells was the perfume of reality. Mira was already there, a fortress of crimson robes and legal scrolls. She took one look at my face and set down her quill with a definitive click. "You have that look. The I've been thoroughly ravished by a politically inconvenient man look. Should I begin drafting your defense for the inevitable breach of heart contract?" I slid into the seat opposite her, a wry smile touching my lips. "Against the future Archmage of the Ether Weavers?" you'd have more success prosecuting the sun for rising. The solar cycle is at least predictable, she retorted, taking a sip of her wine. Men like Theron are governed by the tides of power, not affection. Her green eyes, however, held a flicker of genuine concern behind the razor wire of her sarcasm. Calla arrived then, a vision in emerald silk. The air around her shifted, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine and something sharper, like ozone after a lightning strike. "Darlings," she purred, settling beside me and gracefully summoning the wine carafe. "The emotional climate in here is electrically charged." Her amber eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned me. A complex cocktail. High passion with a troubling undercurrent of apprehension. She added a single, iridescent drop from a vial at her wrist to her glass. The liquid swirled into a mesmerizing vortex of gold and violet. A stabilizer. For when the heart's chemistry grows volatile. "My chemistry is perfectly balanced," I said, though my pulse quickened under her scrutiny. Famous last words before the explosion, Mira muttered into her glass. Our quartet was completed by Bianna's arrival, which was, as always, announced by a gust of wind that made the candle flame shudder. Her storm night armor was dusted with the grit of the training grounds, her dark curls a tempest around a face etched with frustration. "Don't ask," she grumbled, collapsing into her chair and reaching for the carafe. She drank deeply, then set it down with a thud. "The Commander." Another lecture on containing my atmospheric disruptions. As if the storm inside me cares for borders. She flexed her fingers, and a tiny, angry spark leaped to the wooden table, leaving a blackened pinprick. She stared at it, her expression a mix of defiance and despair. It's like a caged animal, scratching to get out. "I'm so tired of holding the bars. I'm afraid one day I'll just let go." The table fell quiet. My personal drama with Theron felt suddenly small and self-indulgent in the face of Bianna's constant, internal war. It was then that the door to the moon and ember opened, and the very air in the room grew still, as if waiting for a storm to break. He was not a guild lord. He was a study in shadows and silence. Dressed in worn, black leathers, he moved with a predator's fluid grace, his presence absorbing the light around him. His hair was the color of a starless night, and his face was all sharp, unforgiving angles. But it was his eyes that held me. They were the color of ancient amber, and they held a depth of sorrow that felt older than the city itself. A long, leather-wrapped hilt rose over his shoulder. A witcher. He crossed the room, the crowd parting for him not out of respect, but out of an instinctive wariness. He stopped before our table, his gaze a physical weight. "My name is Kalen," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp like stone grinding against stone. "I hunt what others refuse to see." His amber eyes swept over us, lingering on each face before settling on me. "And I have come to Eldoria because the city is being consumed from within. Not by a monster of flesh, but by a thief of memory." He placed a small, smooth, gray river stone on our table. It was utterly unremarkable, but as it settled, the familiar sounds of the tavern, the laughter, the clink of glasses, the crackle of the fire, seemed to grow distant, muted. "The lament," he said, the word dropping into the sudden quiet like a stone into a deep well. "An entity that feeds not on flesh, but on moments. On love, on joy, on grief. It consumes the memories that make us who we are, leaving behind hollow echoes. His eyes locked with mine, and I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. Its presence grows stronger by the day, and it is drawn to the most vibrant, complex memories it can find to devour. His gaze was an accusation and a plea. It is coming for the one who gives stories life. It is coming for you. The silence Kalen brought with him was a physical presence, thick and suffocating. It is coming for you. The words echoed not in the air, but in the hollow space they carved inside me. The memory of Theron's touch, once so vivid, suddenly felt fragile, like a parchment page that could be torn away. What was a kiss without the memory of it? What was a story if the feelings that birthed it could be stolen? Mira was the first to shatter the stillness, her voice cutting through the unnatural quiet with the precision of a legal argument. A thief of memory. The evidentiary standards for such a claim are, to put it mildly, metaphysical. You're asking us to act on an allegation that violates every known principle of magical jurisprudence. Kalen's amber eyes didn't waver. The evidence is in the gaps, Mistress Doran. In the conversations you can't quite finish. The jokes whose punchlines you've forgotten. The faces that feel familiar but whose names slip from your grasp. It doesn't steal the big things first. It takes the small, precious moments, the mortar between the bricks of a life. Until one day, the whole structure collapses. A cold dread, deeper than before, washed over me. He was right. Just yesterday, I'd struggled to recall the name of the baker whose pastries I bought every morning. I'd chalked it up to fatigue, to being distracted by Theron. Now, it felt like a theft. Calla leaned forward, her alchemist's fascination overriding her fear. The degradation of episodic and emotional memory. I've noted a marked decrease in the potency of my nostalgia-based elixirs. The memories used as ingredients lack resonance. She looked at Kalen with intense curiosity. You're saying this entropy has a consciousness? A palate. Bianna stood, her chair scraping loudly in the hush. My first sparring match, she said, her voice tight. The feel of the practiced sword in my hands, the smell of the rain, it's fuzzy, like a dream. She looked at her hands, where the spark seemed dimmer, as if even her power was forgetting its own strength. If this thing takes my past, what future do I have? It doesn't just take the past, Kalen corrected, his voice a low, relentless rasp. It unmakes the person you became because of it. Its lair is the Hall of Echoes, a place deep beneath the city where lost memories gather. We cannot bar the door. It is made of forgotten promises. The only way to stop it is to remind it why memories matter. We must create a moment so powerful, so true, that it cannot be consumed. A memory that reminds it of what it seeks to destroy. Mira scoffed, but it was a hollow sound. And I suppose you have a blueprint for manufacturing unforgettable moments? No, Kalen said, his gaze finding each of ours in turn. But I have you. A friendship that is a living history. A logic that provides the structure. An alchemy that provides the emotion. A storm that provides the raw power. And a heart, his gaze settled on me, that provides the narrative. You are a walking library of moments. And that is a treasure the Lament has never faced. He was speaking to the very essence of what bound us together. He saw past our titles and our magic to the shared history that was our greatest strength. The plan is existential folly, Mira stated, her arms crossed. We descend into a pit of lost memories and, what? Have a particularly poignant picnic? Essentially, yes, Kalen replied, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something like grim amusement in his ancient eyes. I can guide you to the hall. My nature allows me to navigate its influence. But once we are there, you must remember. Your combined memories must be a beacon so bright it blinds the thief. The risk was a yawning chasm. Failure meant not just death, but the unmaking of our very identities. But the alternative, allowing this entity to use me as its doorway to devour the city's soul, one cherished moment at a time, was a fate worse than death. I thought of Theron, of his controlled, compartmentalized life. Would he even notice as the colors of his world faded to gray, one stolen memory at a time? We'll do it, I said, my voice a whisper that held the weight of my own fragile past. Bianna gave a sharp nod, a glimmer of her old fire returning. Kala was already inspecting her vials. I may have something to enhance mnemonic clarity. Mira let out a long, weary breath. I'll attempt to find a legal precedent for the defense of personal history. The journey to the Hall of Echoes was a descent into a ghost library of the soul. The path led down through caverns where the walls seemed to whisper with half-heard conversations and faded laughter. The air grew cold and thin, and the light from the glowing Maas Kalen carried seemed to dim, as if the darkness itself was hungry for remembrance. The hall itself was a vast, cavernous space, but it was not empty. It was filled with a swirling, silvery mist, and within that mist, I could see fleeting images, a child's first step, a lover's kiss, a final goodbye, all playing out in a silent, endless, heartbreaking loop. The lament was here, feasting. At the heart of the hall, the mist coalesced into a form. It was not a creature, but an absence, a man-shaped void that drifted through the sea of memories, its passage causing the shimmering images to flicker and die. The memory thief. As we stood at the edge, the thief's attention turned toward us. Not with a look, but with a hunger. The mist around us thickened, and I felt a sudden, sharp tug at my mind. The memory of my mother's voice, singing a lullaby, it grew faint, the melody slipping away like sand through my fingers. Now, Kalen whispered, his voice strained. Remember. Out loud. But the thief's influence was a vacuum, sucking the very thoughts from my head. I grasped for a memory, any memory, but they were smoke. I saw Mira open her mouth to speak, to impose order, but her words were stolen before they formed. Kala's vials, meant to sharpen recollection, seemed to cloud over, their magic muted. Bianna clenched her fists, her face a mask of concentration, but the storm inside her was a distant rumble, a half-forgotten dream. The memory thief began to glide toward us, a void moving through a sea of stolen light. It was coming for me. I could feel it pulling at the threads of my being, unraveling the tapestry of my life. I was being unmade, moment by moment. I looked at Kalen, desperate. His amber eyes met mine, and in them I saw not fear, but a profound, aching resolve. He had faced this before. He had always faced this. And in that moment of absolute despair, I understood. We couldn't fight the thief with a single memory it could consume. We had to fight it with the act of remembering itself. A shared act. I stopped trying to grasp one specific memory. Instead, I reached out, my hands finding Bianna's and Kala's. Mira, seeing my intent, completed the circle, her grip firm. We stood there, the four of us, hand in hand, facing the advancing void. We didn't speak of one thing. We began to speak of everything. Mira, her voice shaking, recalled the first time she'd won an impossible case, the fierce pride in her father's eyes. Kala, with tears streaming down her face, remembered the first potion she'd ever brewed successfully, the simple, unadulterated joy of creation. Bianna, her voice a raw whisper, spoke of the first time she'd called lightning, not in fear, but in wonder, feeling the raw power of the world flow through her. And I remembered them. I remembered the night we'd found Mira weeping over a lost love and stayed with her until dawn. I remembered the time Kala's lab had exploded and we'd helped her rebuild, laughing through the soot. I remembered holding Bianna's hand as she confessed her deepest fear, the storm inside her quiet for once in the face of our acceptance. We were not offering the thief a single memory. We were offering it the story of us. A story written in 1,000 shared moments, a tapestry of friendships so dense and vibrant it could not be unraveled. The memory thief paused. The sheer, collaborative act of remembrance, the weaving together of our individual histories into one unbreakable narrative, was a paradox it could not process. It could consume a solitary moment, but it could not consume this living, breathing chronicle of connection. Kalen watched us, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something like hope in his eyes. And then, from the depths of the Hall of Echoes, a single, lost memory fought its way back to the light. It was Bianna's, the memory of her first storm, not as a curse, but as a gift. And it began to sing. The memory did not return as a silent image, but as a symphony. It was the roar of wind through Bianna's childhood hair, the taste of rain on her tongue, the electric thrill of the first lightning bolt she'd ever called, not in fear, but in ecstatic communion. The memory sang a song of pure, untamed power, a melody that had been buried under years of shame and was now bursting free. Our shared act of remembrance had not just created a barrier, it had become a catalyst. The thief recoiled, the void at its center rippling with confusion. It was not prepared for a memory that fought back, that was not a passive, fading picture, but an active, living force. Mira, sensing the shift, did not just recall her court victory, she relived the iron certainty of her logic, the unshakable foundation of her truth. She poured that certainty into our circle, a golden thread of inviolable fact that wove through Bianna's storm song, giving it structure and purpose. Kala did not just remember her first successful potion, she recaptured the alchemist's fire of discovery, the moment of transformation. She channeled that energy, not into a vial, but into the space between us, a shimmering catalyst that intensified Myra's logic and Bianna's passion, blending them into something entirely new. And I did not just remember our friendship. I became its scribe. I poured into our collective resonance the entire narrative of us, the arguments and the reconciliations, the secrets kept and the burdens shared. I gave the lament a story it could not consume because it was still being written, a story whose power lay in its continuity, in its refusal to be a finished, static thing. Our combined resonance, heart, mind, alchemy, and storm, did not attack the thief. It offered it a choice. The swirling, silvery mist of the Hall of Echoes, once a passive resource for the entity to devour, began to stir. The stolen memories within it, sparked by the vitality of our own, began to fight back. A forgotten first kiss here, a moment of triumph there, a shared laugh somewhere else. They all began to glow brighter, to reclaim their space, to resist the pull of the void. The memory thief was not being destroyed, it was being overwhelmed. The sheer, defiant aliveness of our shared past, amplified by the power of our present connection, was a feast it could not stomach. The void at its center began to flicker, not with hunger, but with something else, recognition. It was not a monster, but a lonely, broken reflection of what it had once been, a keeper of histories, now twisted into a thief. The void collapsed in on itself, and from its center, a single, perfect pearl of light emerged. It was the first memory ever stolen, now purified and returned. It floated gently to the floor of the hall, and where it touched, the gray stone bloomed with color and life. The thief was gone. In its place was the potential for healing, for the Hall of Echoes to become a library again, not a larder. The oppressive silence shattered, replaced by a gentle, rising hum, the sound of a million memories breathing a sigh of relief, settling back into their proper place in the tapestry of time. We stood, trembling, our hands still linked, the echoes of our own powerful remembering fading into a peaceful, grateful quiet. The hall was no longer a place of loss, but a sanctuary of preservation. Kalen stood before us, and the deep lines of sorrow on his face had softened. The ancient weariness in his amber eyes had been replaced by a quiet, profound wonder. "You didn't hide your memories from the thief," he said, his voice no longer a gravelly rasp, but the low, warm tone of a man unburdened. "You weaponized them. You turned your past into a shield." He looked at me, and the connection I felt was deeper and more real than any fleeting passion I'd experienced with Theron. It was not about sonnets or fire orchids. It was the shared understanding of two people who had faced the dissolution of self and had chosen to remember who they were together. In the days that followed, Eldoria awoke from a dream it hadn't known it was having. The city felt sharper, more vivid. People greeted each other with genuine recognition, conversations flowed without awkward pauses, and the arts flourished with a new depth of feeling. The guilds, freed from the subtle, draining influence of the lament, began to shift. Theron's ether weavers, now able to think clearly, turned their talents to crafting spells of remembrance and healing. Mira, inspired, began drafting the rites of sentient memory, a groundbreaking legal framework that protected the sanctity of personal experience from magical manipulation. Kala's potions now held the deep, resonant power of fully integrated memories, and she taught others to cherish their emotional history. Bianna's storm was no longer a source of fear, but a celebrated part of her identity, a powerful memory made manifest. She learned to wield it with confidence, her past no longer a chain but a foundation. And Kalen, he did not return to his lonely hunt. The hunter of the unmade had found something worth protecting. He became the warden of the Hall of Echoes, a guardian who understood the precious fragility of the past. Our conversations were not filled with pretty words or grand declarations, but with the comfortable, profound silence of two people who know the weight of memory and choose to build a future anyway. His kisses were not performances, they were promises, each one a new memory to be cherished. I sit at my desk now, the sounds of the fully remembered city a lively symphony outside my window. I still write my stories, but they're different. They are not just about forbidden passions or the thrill of a secret. They are about the quiet heroism of a remembered kindness, the enduring strength of a shared laugh, the profound love found in the simple, brave act of remembering each other and ourselves. For I have learned that the most powerful magic is not in the grandest spell or the most complex enchantment. It is in the small, defiant act of holding onto a moment. It is in the friendship that becomes a living history, and the love that is not a fleeting sonnet, but a story we choose to tell and retell and keep alive forever. And so, the final echoes of our story settle, a testament to the unbreakable power of memory, friendship, and love. We hope Serena's journey and the unyielding bond between these four women reminded you that our pasts, both beautiful and painful, are the threads that weave the tapestry of who we are. But the library of Velvet Valor holds countless more stories waiting to be remembered. If this tale of stolen memories, fierce loyalty, and love that fought to remember its own name captured your heart, then you've found your home for full-length, cinematic romantasy. Ready to discover what story awaits you next? Subscribe to Velvet Valor Romantasy Audiobook and never miss a new tale. Let us be your guide through worlds where love is the most powerful magic of all. Like this video if you believe in the power of memory, friendship, and love that writes its own destiny. Comment below and tell us, what memory would you fight the hardest to protect? Which of the four women's journeys resonated most deeply with you? We read every comment and love hearing from our community. Your support is the magic that allows us to create these complete audiobooks. Thank you for listening, for sharing in these emotional journeys, and for keeping your heart open to stories that remind us of the power of connection. Until our next adventure begins. Yours in Stories and Sorcery, the Velvet Valor narrator.